I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, coming up on Football Today.
From a business point of view, if this was any club other than West Ham, we would not be buying it. We bought this as fans, we bought this as supporters.
All they've said to us is lies, lies and lies. And we've all had enough of it.
After 10 years, I'm a bit disappointed that we've not achieved more. I'd have loved to have got to a cup final. I'm still hopeful in my lifetime. It's as I said earlier, it's the ups and downs in that 10 years.
On January 19th, 2010, David Sullivan and David Gold bought their hometown club, West Ham United, saving it from financial ruin. They pledged they'd turn around the club and take it to new heights. Fast forward to last Saturday, and instead of celebrating their 10th anniversary, West Ham owners were greeted by fan protests. Now the club sit in 17th place and are mired in a relegation fight, just like the day they bought it. Today we look at the last decade and ask, has West Ham United lost its soul?
It has been announced that supporters group Hammers United intend to stage a static protest prior to West Ham United's next home Premier League fixture against Everton on the 18th of January. According to Representative Paul Colborne, speaking in a video released on behalf of Hammers United, the group intend to protest as a result of the board having failed to deliver upon a 10-point plan announced shortly after they took control of the club back in 2010.
When I got there, I noticed there was a lot of banners that I put up, like liars, get the board out.
Roshane Thomas covers West Ham United for The Athletic.
Fans have had enough, so I spoke to a few supporters. I was mostly saying, like, this is long overdue, like, we've all had enough, but they need to go, sort of thing. So when the protest actually got underway, more fans started showing up, people started recording it. I recorded a live broadcast on my Twitter feed, just so fans could see what was going on.
No one wanted, this is what no one wanted. This is not the truth. Have a look around, turn around. Is this your truth? No! Is this our truth? No! No! Today we start. Today from here we build. Today we start. And we start to take our club back. Brick, seat by seat, blade of grass by blade of grass. Building up with colour and blue. Building up with colour and blue.
And yeah, a lot of speakers, they all spoke well, some of their concerns, why they feel like the board haven't been, good enough during their 10 years.
The promised ambitions that they put out for our club have not happened. And also we have, as a football club, a vice chair that seems more interested and concerned with growing her own brand than being an effective CEO of our club.
But when certain speakers hit the key points, that's when the fans started saying, yes, like it's all lies.
And if they don't listen now, they are out. I know you're angry, but remember, this is the start. We don't win the war today. This is the start. Green lines.
Get Brady out, get Sullivan out, get Gold out. At that point, people were saying they're going to leave at half-time during the match against Everton, but that didn't take place. But, that was the momentum in the game. People were saying, we should leave at half-time. But, yeah, that was pretty much the atmosphere.
When you spoke to fans, what were some of the things that they were saying?
Well, I spoke to quite a few, but two in particular really caught my attention. That's Mick and Richard. And they're in their late 50s, early 60s. So they've been through the 60s, the 80s rather, when West Ham won the FA Cup and the good times. Their main concern is, for the younger generation, it's not looking optimistic, it's not looking promising. The era they grew up in, West Ham competed in cup competitions, That hasn't been the case recently. West Ham, not to say they'll win the league, but West Ham were like challenging. That's not the case anymore. West Ham played like exciting football. That's not really the case these days. So they're concerned about like the younger generation and like what's going to happen for them sort of thing. That's their main concern.
Did the younger fans feel similarly?
Yeah, of course. I mean, younger fans, they spoke about like going to away games for season, especially the Oxford game where West Ham lost like 4-0. And they think to themselves like, what's the point? Like, what's the point in like going to these matches where the team's not going to deliver? You know, we're speaking about 10 years. If you look at the last 10 years, the board has had a lot of flair players. And for whatever reason, it hasn't really worked out. It hasn't been the right personnel. In fairness to the board, they've invested money in the team, but it hasn't been the right signings. It hasn't been the right recruitment. So we're thinking, like, if this is what the past 10 years have been to show for what we have now, like, God knows what will happen in the next 10 years. So that's another concern they have as well.
How big a move is this for fans there? You know, do they protest often? You know, like if we were to put this in context, you know, how big an action was this protest?
Yeah, I feel like this is like the start of something of like gaining momentum for the board to take notice, because previously the protest was mainly in the stadium. So like, you know, I remember one guy, I think it was against Burnley last season, if I'm not mistaken, where a supporter ran on the pitch and stuck the flag in the middle of the pitch.
We have someone who's rather stupidly decided to come on the field and confront Mark Noble. Well, David Sullivan watching on. Him and David Gold have been the subjects of much of the fans' frustrations. There are an increasing number of West Ham United supporters massing in front of the director's box. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite like this. Now there's another supporter who's decided to take matters into his own hands, and that really isn't helping.
So obviously you can't do protests about like that way, because you'll get banned from going to games. And no supporter wants to get banned from watching West Ham, no matter how bad they're playing. So this is like a peaceful way of doing it, but to say, take notice of us, like we're not going anywhere, this will only get bigger. So that's another factor behind this protest as well.
Well, let's rewind a little bit, you know, to 10 years ago, if you will. Let's talk about some of the main characters. Who is David Sullivan, David Gold, and Karen Brady?
David Sullivan and David Gold, they're like sort of, not upbringing, but like rags to riches stories for making a lot of their money in like soft porn magazines. So that's how they sort of made their fortune.
Wait, soft porn? I mean, they weren't in porn, right? They were they were selling porn.
Yeah, selling soft porn like magazines and whatnot. Like I said, like at the time it was frowned upon. It's like, you know, this is how you're making your money. Like, who are you, sort of thing. But I mean, in fairness to David Sullivan and David Gold, they made it work. And then David Sullivan gave Karen Brady a chance to like sell advertisement in the magazine, and then from then they went to Birmingham City, and that was pretty much Karen Brady's idea to like, you know, go to a football club, and then that's when he formed a bond as well, and then from then onwards they went to West Ham.
So these two already own Birmingham City, and they have some kind of mixed results. You know, they get promotion, but they also get some relegations as well. Why do they buy West Ham?
Well, again, they bought West Ham because, you know, the fans, they're from the area, and also at the time, it was a great opportunity for them to get a Premier League team. Because Birmingham, I think I'm right in saying, they've been relegated to the Championship. So, you know what I mean, it's a great chance to get to be owners of a club where we've had always like a deep feeling for. So they became owners of West Ham, and then from there, you know, they incurred a lot of debt. Considering how bad it was, West Ham were close to being in administration. So I know the board get a lot of hard time, but in fairness to them, you know, they've helped the club, you know, become a lot financially stable, because under the Icelandic owners, you know, it's anything but stable when it came to finance.
And so how would you characterize maybe the decade at the club with them as owners?
The main thing when you think about it is stadium move. It's the most significant point of the last 10 years. I mean, West Ham fans, they loved Upton Park, and even to this day they still love it. They walk past it, it's a block of flats now, but they'll still walk it and still have like fantastic memories.
Get your ex magazine. It's cheaper than an ex-wife. All your Upton Park memories. Don't let them fade and die.
Straight back from Boyce. What a goal!
And the fact about that stadium is, at the time, it was David Sullivan in particular, who said, we're going to be competing European football. We're going to be playing great football. This is going to help us reach the next level.
Move was supposed to be something that we built on, something that gave us a stepping block to be better, to get better, to attract better players.
What's ruined it most for fans is the promise that came with the stadium, the promise of challenging to break the top 6 and then eventually the top 4.
And since that time, it hasn't really worked. The team hasn't kicked on. I think in a recent interview with The Standard, David Sullivan said, being in a London stadium has helped us become, like, say, in the Premier League. If we were at Upton Park, would it be a Premier League team? And a lot of fans are like, that's a load of nonsense. Because if this is what we have to show for being in London stadium, we should have stayed at Upton Park. So that's one of the biggest reasons why fans are just so frustrated. And when you think about the last 10 years, this has been the most important point, and it hasn't worked out.
Well, you pointed out something interesting in your story from this week, which is that they had a poll in 2013 and only 5% of West Ham fans opposed the move to the Olympic Stadium, while 85% supported it. So why does it feel like the opposite now?
Yeah, I know, because now when you think about the stadium, right, it doesn't feel like West Ham. That's one of the biggest takeaways you get from going around the stadium. It doesn't feel like West Ham. I mean, it's an athletics track. That's the best way of putting it. It's an athletics stadium, rather. They've changed it now. There's a carpet around the athletics part, but I mean, it just doesn't feel like home for West Ham. The fans, to their credit, they try and make it great in terms of atmosphere, but it will never replicate what Upton Park was.
So why do you think they were so okay with the move at the time?
Yeah, because more capacity inside the stadium, a better chance for the club to become much better in terms financially, in terms of like getting recruitment, well, for the board, like merchandise, season ticket demand, and also like a fresh start somewhere else, you could say. And again, to regurgitate what I said at the time, David Sullivan said, we're going to be playing European football, we can like compete in cup competitions, and since then, it hasn't worked out. So I think that's one of the reasons why fans are like, what's happened here?
It's also a little bit of be careful what you wish for type thing.
100%, be careful what you wish for. I mean, if fans had a chance now to go back to Upton Park, obviously it's been demolished now, but if they had a chance to go back to Upton Park, I think a lot of them would snap your arms off to go back there.
So that's one of the main drivers of this protest.
That, and also in terms of bad recruitment, this could be like a 2-hour podcast on bad recruitment when you think about the personnel West Ham have brought in. Like I said, there's been a tendency to sign a lot of flair players, and it hasn't really worked out. The fans are thinking like what on earth are we doing? We're signing these players, we're not having an immediate impact to the team. Whenever the board come out and speak to the media, quite often, sometimes it's full of waffle. So fans are like, even when you do speak to the media, it's nothing of any substance.
It seems that from the top that they don't have any direction or really identity when it comes to their signings or who they're pursuing.
Mario Husilos, who's formerly director of football, he's left. There hasn't even been like a priority to get someone in as a director of football. We're led to believe it's mainly David Sullivan who does the signings. And you're thinking, right, you're quite on in age now. Surely you'll give to someone else that sort of responsibility to bring the players in, because the recruitment hasn't been great. Look at the record signing last summer from Sebastian Haller. Hasn't really done great. Only 6 goals in the Premier League this season.
Sebastian Haller, who has had some fallow weeks, finally finds the way to goal again.
45 million for 6 goals during the halfway point of the Premier League season. Hasn't been good. Felipe Anderson was good last season. He's tailed off this season. So fans are thinking like, even when we bring someone in, look, for example, Darren Randolph. Obviously, fair enough, he's fit now, but he was injured at the time. Look how long his medical took. You're bringing in an injured goalkeeper to replace a goalkeeper who's already injured. So like, fans are thinking like, what is the logic behind this? And then obviously Roberto, I mean, oh my goodness. He's gone on loan now to Alvas in the Spanish league, but I mean, that was something else.
Westwood swirls it in, the goalkeeper doesn't get there, makes a huge error. That was just awful goalkeeping from Roberto.
So all in all, fans are looking at this and thinking like, we have no structure, we're just going through Wikipedia, signing this player, signing that player, signing that player, and they're not even good. They're not playing great for us, so yeah.
To bring it back to the stadium, though, it's interesting that they're having a protest in 2020 about a stadium that's no longer there and with no real chance of it ever being brought back. I mean, what are they expecting really from this protest?
Well, definitely to hit home to the board that, We're here to stay and we're not going anywhere. In an ideal world, West Ham fans will want the board to sell out, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I spoke to a lot of fans, but the two in particular, Mick and Richard, they're like, they need to start listening to us, the board. Start taking our points on board, you know, have some sort of dialogue with us. Don't look at us as like some sort of customers or not a cash cow, but like just people you can get money off each and every week. Listen to our thoughts. This is what we have problems with. This is what needs to be addressed. And like time and time when West Ham fans like voice their opinions, it falls on deaf ears. They want to be heard.
We've mentioned that the owners, David Sullivan and David Gold, are two local boys living out their dream of owning their own boyhood club. In the piece you wrote this week, there are 3 references to the club losing its soul, and that is echoed by 3 fans in the comment section. How do we explain 2 boyhood fans being the ones to lose the club's soul?
Yep, I totally agree. And you just think like, with them being fans for a long time, knowing the club the way they do, surely they would have some sort of like understanding of like why fans are upset or why fans like Brandon Stadium, for example, like a soulless ground. But again, it just seems like, from my experience, it seems like it falls on deaf ears sometimes. But you think about it, it must hurt them a little bit. About considering they've been there for the best part of 10 years, been fans beforehand, that the fact that fans are upset is solely down to them. You know what I mean? Surely they want to have some sort of like, they want to feel good about the decade, but the fact that they helped, and you can't really say they've been able to do that for West Ham fans.
Do you think that affects them, that they're the one being accused of being soulless? You know, when they said that they wanted to buy the club, not for any financial reasons, although we can speculate if that is the case, but do you think that affects them?
I mean, it must do. We're all humans at the end of the day, but it must affect them deep down.
Well, it's very painful, you know, especially on Twitter, when you hear people claiming that, asking where all the money's gone, as if we're stealing it. That's very, very painful.
In fairness to the board, they have invested a lot of money in the team, so they try to find ways to like make fans happy. As I mentioned, they signed a lot of flair players, so they're trying to like bring the wow factor back and whatnot, but you could say perhaps they're overdoing it. It's a case of like getting back to basics. What do you think of, when you think of West Ham, you think of like die-hard passionate fans, you know? You think of like players like Di Canio, you know, Frank Lampard Sr., you know, Trevor Sinclair, these type of players you think of. And like, who do you have barring Mark Noble who represents like players in the past? West Ham is a working class club, and the move to the London Stadium, it's like they're trying to like get West Ham away from where it used to be. Like, for example, when I spoke to supporters, they were like, it cost them so much money like to buy a hot dog, for example. One supporter told me it cost him £9 to buy a hot dog. Can you imagine? £9 to buy a hot dog at the London Stadium. How much would that be at Upton Park? Probably what, £4, £3? You know what I mean? The value of the club, it feels like it's been lost a lot over the past 10 years.
In many ways, though, they still are a working class club. They do very good work in the community with the West Ham Foundation. They pay their employees a living wage, and their season ticket is the cheapest in the country. But what you're also saying is they have that part, but they've also lost their soul in other ways.
In all their interviews, Brady spoke to Sky News last week.
35,000 families, and we have the cheapest season ticket in the Premier League, £99 for a child to come to Premier League football. That's one of the drives that we had to have affordable football in the Premier League. It was very important to us in our community strategy. So no, we don't think it was a mistake.
David Gold spoke to TalkSport.
You have to make a decision. You know, do you spend 100 million on a training facility, or do you spend 10 million on a training facility and 90 million on bringing in players like Sebastian? But if people don't dig deep enough, they will say, oh, well, you haven't spent enough on players. Well, that's because we've spent some on the infrastructure.
David Sullivan spoke to the Evening Standard, and they all mentioned these points. You know, we do a lot of work in the community. We have the cheapest season tickets. But fans will probably think, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. Just rolling a load of stuff of like PR stuff. We don't care about that. We care about on-the-field success. That's what we care about. I mean, it is a good point you mentioned, the cheap season tickets. But I mean, who wants to watch West Ham now when you think about what they produce on the pitch?
A lot of fans want to talk about wanting to be a community club, right? And yet a lot of the things that we just kind of mentioned are more community driven. And yet you're kind of saying that that doesn't really necessarily matter to these fans.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like, the one thing I would say to that is like the West Ham players, they do interact a lot with the community. I mean, they will go into like, hospitals and see like sick kids. I know Martin Noble's a patron for, I think it's the New Hospice, if I'm not mistaken. So even he does his charity work, which is good to see. But I mean, if you were to get like a group of fans together, the one thing they would worry about is on the field success. The past 10 years, there's been a relegation. There's been, I think, only one season where they like been on the verge of qualifying for the Europa League. Apart from that, it's been nothing but annual battles to stay in the Premier League. Nothing but like relegation battles. So if that's what you have to show for the last 10 years, and again, as we mentioned before, 16th when they took over, 16th on the 10th anniversary, if that's what you have to show for the last 10 years, then it's not good enough, really.
You know, there's one other thing that you mentioned in your piece. Karen Brady has her own column in The Sun.
Yeah.
You know, David Gold is on Twitter. David Sullivan's son, Jack, is on Twitter and, you know, talks quite a bit on there. How much of this comes down to fans not liking their owners having a vocal presence and being, shall we say, stars or taking an active, outspoken role in the club?
When it comes to Karen Brady and her column, because out of Karen Brady, Sullivan and Gold, it tends to be Karen Brady who engages with the media more, mainly because of her column and, you know, Apprentice and so on and so forth. So when fans read her columns, quite often they think it's nothing relevant to the club. Sometimes it's full of waffle. And I'll give an example. She wrote a piece on Pellegrini having leadership. Pellegrini has great leadership, you know, he's the right man for the job. I think I'm right in saying 3 weeks later, Pellegrini was sacked. So if fans read that, and then the manager's gone less than a month later, they're thinking what on earth is going on? And then obviously with Jack Sullivan, but previously he used to be very bad when it came to social media. He used to be really bad. He used to criticise, I think, Sam Allardyce. He would leak team news, talk about transfers before it's been confirmed. So even that, he's calmed down a lot now, but that used to be the case. David Gold, to be honest, in my opinion, I quite like David Gold on social media. I think he's very good when it comes to Twitter. So, in all the three, I feel like even when I was at the protest, a lot of the resentment stems towards Karen Brady because she engaged with the media more. And I feel like when she has the opportunity to speak about West Ham, she doesn't really to the degree where West Ham fans are content.
So based on some of the pieces that I've read, it also seems that the other issues that they promised too much kind of at the beginning and built the expectations too high. And, you know, some of these other owners, by not talking, aren't building those expectations.
It's true. No, that's very true because, as we mentioned before, prior to Stadium Move, they said, Sullivan said, we're going to compete in competitions, we're going to try and get European football, we're going to compete high up the table. I think I might say the likes like Chelsea, Arsenal, and it hasn't happened. I mean, West Ham have been at the lower end of the table, quite often. And a lot of it is fans are thinking if this is where we are, then what was the point in leaving Upton Park? Why did we leave Upton Park if this is what we're going to have to show for? Yeah, we have more fans in the stadium. Yes, we have perhaps more money to spend on players, but what was the point? So the owners did promise way too much, in my opinion.
We'll only let them down in the sense that we should have not been so positive in what we should have made it clear that these are our hopes and dreams, but they're not. These promises weren't written in stone.
And then that's why, again, we have to protest on Saturday because fans have had enough.
Should we be surprised by any of this? We did start by saying not too long ago that David Gold and David Sullivan were owners before at Birmingham City with mixed results. Why did West Ham fans think it would be any different?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question, in fact. You know what? In fact, on my 10th anniversary piece, myself and Under the Cave, there was a good comment. I think his name was Daniel. And he said, Brady, Gold and Sullivan, in the time as owners, they've been relegated 4 times. Oh, that's crazy when you think about it. Relegated 4 times. So if they had 2 previous relegation at Birmingham City and then a relegation at West Ham, you're thinking 2 rather, relegation at West Ham, you're thinking damn, fans should have known previously this would have been the case. But I feel it was a case of optimism because things are so bad under the Icelandic owners. But it's a case of, here we go, new owners, they made us more stable, we're not in administration. Perhaps there could be light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, let's look forward to the future. What can we expect from fans and the owners in the upcoming weeks and months?
Well, the main priority now, with it being the transfer window, to get the right personnel in, get a central midfielder, get a right back, just invest in the team. I know we mentioned it previously, Darren Randolph, and the fact is he's 32. There's a lot of tendency to sign like older players who have no resale value. Like get young players from the Championship who are good. When you think about the recruitment, the best signings have been players who haven't really cost much. James Collins, Mikel Antonio, these kind of players who've been like under like 5 million, so to speak. It's the expensive signings who haven't really worked out. So get that right, get that spot on, do better on the pitch, climb higher the table. Let's not be in a relegation battle every season. These are what West Ham fans want for the like forthcoming future. And obviously, most importantly, to engage with fans. Obviously, you can do it on Twitter, but like, just don't like let their concerns or their opinions fall on deaf ears. That's like one of the main priorities West Ham fans want to be sorted out in the not too distant future.
You can read all of Roshane Thomas's coverage of West Ham United on The Athletic. And there you can find his piece on their 10th anniversary. The show is produced by John McKenzie. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, and this was Football Today. And if you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on iTunes and share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.